welcome with me to the Titanic exhibition, where you'll get to see some of the coolest parts of this whole thing, including postcards and real-life things, not only from the ship, but also things that were made on the ship.
The Titanic is one of the world's most famous ships to be known. Its sister ships include the Britannic and the Olympic, made by the same company of the White Star Line. The ship sailed on April 10th of 1912, and about 4 days later, on late night of April 14th to the early hours of April 15th, the ship hit an iceberg and faced its tragic ending, breaking into two halves and sinking to the bottom of the ocean. It was the Titanic's maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City. And here we see a real 3D model of what the Titanic actually looked like. It was 852 feet long, with its breadth being 92 feet and 6 inches. It was 175 feet high, and its depth being 64 feet. Its strut was about 34 feet and 7 inches from the keel to the waterline. It carried a capacity of 3,320 people, with 2,440 of them being passengers, and the remaining 880 the crew members. They only had 20 lifeboats for safety, which would only suffice for 1,178 people. Here we see the real wooden shafts and the knives that were used to create the ship. These were things that were essential in cutting apart and assembling the ship as a whole. Throughout the exhibition, we'll see many postcards, like these, which were sent to show how the ship was and the progress that was being made with how it was being built. One of the pictures is transposed into color to see what it actually would have looked like if we were to see it today. And here are more of when it was being built. Actual, real photographies. Here are a couple more compartments and things that were inside the Titanic, as well as more photographs and a letter from its owner, and even more of a shaft. It also shows a long corridor which first-class passengers would have lived in. The big part of the exhibition was a lot about the life of what first-class passengers lived in. It gives you lots of detailed information and even its own set model of the room. First class had an amazing amount of furniture and some of the most exquisite things of their time, like a Turkish bath and their own specialty of tea. This is one of the real doors that was part of the Titanic. This would have been part of the first class passenger corridor. So if you were living in that area, this is probably what your door would look like. Their suites were called the parlor suites, some of the most luxurious and expensive of all the ships of the time. And this is what your room would have looked like if you were part, with this long couch and amazing candle lights, and furnished chairs for you to sit on, with amazing woodworks and an amazing fireplace. Who wouldn't feel right at home? You would also experience fine dining with some of the best china sets, including your own special teacups and your own kettle to make your own tea. As a matter of fact, first-class passengers were literally served in a silver platter. All of their fine dining tools were exquisite china or made of some type of silver or brass, something expensive to sweet taste. This is a lot more of what their cigarette boxes would look like, as a lot of people of the time then used to smoke. You'll see that most of their platters were made of glass, and most of their plates were made of ceramic or china. They were finely lined with mostly blue, and in the middle, the Lone Star logo. These are the hangers which you would see back then, and these are some real postcards. These would be some of the letters, and many of the other things that you'd see with the Titanic. This is just what one of your teacups and the chairs would look like, along with more postcards. And for first-class passengers, this was your average dinner table set, with fine knives and a fork, all embedded with the White Star logo. if you ordered your own food, this is probably what your platter would look like. All of these artifacts were retrieved from the actual Titanic itself. So for that matter, all of these are in such amazing condition. A major part of the energy in the ship's fuel came from coal. So there would be several people working to light up the coal and make sure that it was kept burning. This is probably what your average room would look like if you were down there. And of course, this is what your deck would look like to enjoy the night sky. This is probably what one of your beds would look like that if you were in the third or even second class. However, the blankets were thick and wool to make sure you stayed seated. And now, welcome to your first class lobby, with giant stairs and even a balcony on the top, surrounded with statues and a giant chandelier. Perfect to enjoy with the company of your friends and family. These are what your different tickets would look like, at the gate, of course. Second class was a little more bustled up than first class. And your third class boarding gate was extremely wordy, with multiple more signatures than you would in the first or second class. Now, for those of you who had the luxury to live in first class, this is what your corridor would look like. But regardless of which class you were in, you had multiple amounts of food. For example, 11,000 pounds of fresh fish, 7,500 pounds of bacon and ham, 25,000 pounds of poultry and game, and 15,000 bottles of beer. Now, these are what the life jackets would look like. For those people that, after unfortunately hitting the iceberg, this is what you would wear and pray that you would make it somewhere alive. Though no discrimination was made, third class by far had the least amount of survivors, 178 out of 706, second class being 118 out of 285, and first class being the 202 out of 325. Probably the most interactive part of this whole exhibition was the end, where you were part of the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean, filled with debris, broken plates, and parts of your ship. You were one of the half of the ship that sunk. And these are all artifacts, and even real simulations of what styrofoam underwater could look like. You'll see what the rust from the actual ship looked like, including real-life footage from those who actually went to see the Titanic itself.